Hi, my name is Elise Buccelli, and today I'll be showing you how I designed and bound the book Bridgerton, the Duke and I by Julie Quinn for GRC 439 Book Design Technology at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Let's get started. After cleaning my text file, I got straight to printing, and then I knew I wanted to foil my full title page, so I used a process called sleeking, which uses heat to transfer foil to toner. After printing out my guts using the Konica Minolta C12000 digital press on Neenah Classic Crest smooth 70-pound white text paper, I went into folding all 380 pages in half. It came out to about 32 signatures, which is equivalent to 3 pages folded in half, or 6 pages total. Using my bricks and that tool called an awl, I punctured 8 holes into my first signature. And then I continued the process following the blue guide on the rest of the signatures. I forgot to mention that I would also highly recommend labeling by number as I did here so they don't get lost in the chaos. After that, I grabbed my needle and thread and began tying a knot as large as I could. From there, you just start weaving the thread up and through the holes, and then once you add a second signature, there is something that changes, and I'll zoom in a little bit closer, but here I'll show you what happens when you come to the end of a signature. You actually leave a tail and then go ahead and tie those off so that keeps everything nice and secure as you keep adding signatures. So now I'm going to speed it up a little bit and show you the process, and as you can tell it takes a lot of time. So now here I'm zooming in, and as you go past a previous signature, you actually weave the thread through a previous thread. And my focus on my camera is a little funky, but you can kind of get the point. This was a very exciting moment for me because I finally finished sewing everything together and it was so rewarding. So now I'm going to get into how I glued my book together, and this took a good amount of time just because you have to let the glue dry, but I initially put one clip on, got my sponges out, and then slowly started to move my clip as I went down the spine, adding a pretty thick amount of glue just to make sure that everything stayed in place. And as you can see, once I kept going a little bit further, I end up adding my second clip. You'll want to move your clips frequently so they don't dry in place, and then I left my book to dry overnight. Now it's time to cut my book using the Polar cutter. I layered a bunch of pages inside so that it was a cleaner cut. It ended up leaving a pretty round edge though, and then I went and printed my end sheets, which because I didn't cut them at the same time, I had to go in and measure them out and then cut them. Theoretically, they should be 6x9 because that's the size of my book, so technically full size without being folded in half, 12x9. And then now I go into the process of gluing them. You'll see that I add a pretty good chunk of glue that's maybe about 1/4 inch. And then I actually just picked up my book block and set it on top and then made sure that it was all set in place. And that little white strip there is actually just a protector in case any glue got out. I didn't want my clips to stick to my end sheets because they are more fragile and a very important part of the book. So now I'm repeating the process, and you can see I just removed my clips, go ahead and set it back on the best I can, and then I go ahead and add my clips again and let it dry. And now it's time to attach my headbands. I chose gold to match the cover, so I did one side and just stuck it on with a little bit of glue, and then I reversed to the other side. And now I'm going to grab my mole and a scrap piece of paper and line those up accordingly. So the mole should be a little bit shorter than where your headbands are showing so that it doesn't show. And then your scrap piece of paper is just the size of the spine, whereas the mole hangs over about 1 inch on each side. And the mole is there to attach to your end sheets and keep everything in place. So I wrote my name on that little scrap piece of paper in case one day someone opens up my book and didn't know that it was handcrafted by the designer. So now I'm adding my glue, and then I'm sticking down my little piece of scrap paper, and I press it with my bone folder and then wait for it to dry. Next, I grabbed my baby blue faux leather that I bought on Amazon, and I actually wouldn't recommend using this material for this project. It actually ended up working really well, but it's not very forgiving, so it's a little bit on the harder side when you're actually putting together the cover. But here you can see me measuring everything out and attaching my spine board and the book board using the same glue that I've been using. I chose the baby blue color because I love how present it is throughout the TV show, and it's also very light and modern looking. Now you can see me measuring out those corners to get ready to chop them off. I followed a YouTube video on leather book binding, and he actually goes in like I am right now and cuts this 90-degree angle on his corners. With most fabrics you don't have to do this, but if you don't want your leather, real or fake, to create this weird overlay when you bend over those edges, then it's best to kind of keep working with it the way he did. It ended up working really well, and I just keep snipping away, kind of rounding them out after making that 90-degree angle. And then doing the opposite side, I go in and start gluing. I didn't put too much glue because you don't want it to seep out after you flip it over and adhere it to the book board. So as you can see here, I do that, and then I put my bricks on, and I checked it really quickly after that just so I was able to clean up any glue that had seeped out onto the book board. So now you can see me repeating it for all sides, and again leaving my weights on there. So now for what people think is the scariest part, but don't worry, I have tips and tricks on how to make it a little less scary. We're gonna attach our end sheets to our book board. So I'm fanning out glue all over the mole and the end sheets with wax paper in between, and you can see I remove that right there and replace it with a new one. And then as I'm looking at it, you'll see right here, I hold my book block in place, press my spine up against it, and then I let my top flop over. If you don't hold your book block in place, there's a chance it's going to move as you're doing that process and your end sheets will be crooked. But here you can see me doing the other side, so I'm adding my glue just to the book board, not getting on the leather, fanning it out on the other side, and because that side has already been glued down, all I do is put that spine up and let the top fall over right into place. Next up, we're going to cut out our heat transfer vinyl using a Cricut Explore Air 2, and I measured my book cover, and I did have my file design, so I brought it into Cricut Design Space, measured my material, and then hit cut on the machine. This was my first time using a Cricut machine, and I honestly love it. It's definitely going to add to all of my hobbies, but here's what it looks like after cutout, and it's honestly really small. So it's a little bit difficult to weed out at first, but now you can see that I tested it on a scrap piece and it looks beautiful. So after cutting out the design again, I go ahead and put it in the right place and iron it on. I also used heat safe paper. I ironed it for about 10 seconds, let it cool for 5, did another 10, and you should start to see the material showing. So then I peel off the plastic and it looked absolutely beautiful. And then I move on to the spine, and I actually redid this later because my spine ended up being too wide. So the second time I did it, I didn't want to iron directly onto the book because it kind of melted the gluing a little bit last time. So this time I did it before gluing on the book board, and you can see it in the bottom right corner. It looks so much better, and I was so excited. But now we're moving on to the dust jacket. And so here you can see me printing it out. This was definitely one of the last variations, but I actually wanted to do the same gold look, so I added that using my Cricut. However, this time I used adhesive foil. And that's all I have. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any questions, of course, leave comments down below. And I wanted to include the process shot document that I had to submit for class. I had so much fun taking photos of my book and really enjoyed illustrating the cover for my dust jacket using Procreate on my iPad.